Linda McAvan, Labour MEP for Yorkshire and the Humber. When it comes to this regional funding, this funding from Europe for Yorkshire, South Yorkshire, how much do you estimate South Yorkshire's losing out?
At least £40 million. Anybody who lives in South Yorkshire knows that for many years, nearly everything we've had in terms of economic regeneration has come through European funding. But this government has decided not to give us the funding that was allocated from Brussels, and they've allocated instead to other regions have got the funding that was due to South Yorkshire.
This case was eventually taken, as we've heard today, to the Supreme Court. They didn't agree. How much of a knockback is that for you?
Well, I am disappointed, but I think it's interesting that the decision was delayed for many weeks, and that was because the judges didn't come to an easy conclusion. In fact, if you look at the judgment, it was 4-3 in favour of the government, and even the chair of the judges panel said the government's behaviour was unimpressive. So even though the government might have won on legal technicality, there was a general consensus that the amounts given to South Yorkshire were manifestly unfair, and I still think the government's got some explaining to do.
When it comes down to it, where this might matter, presumably where this matters, is in South Yorkshire itself. What kind of impact are you now seeing there, or expecting that to now see in the years ahead, given that there's far less money coming in from Europe?
Well, we know that the government never supported South Yorkshire having this funding. They fought tooth and nail to stop us having a special category of aid, and now they've taken away the extra funding. We also know that the whole system for getting EU funding is in chaos in England. Nobody knows who will be running the programmes, and I've got people ringing my office saying we've got a project, we need more funding, who should we go to? We don't even know. So the government's got a lot of homework to do now to make sure we get the European funding up and running, and frankly they should be looking at putting their hand in their pocket and compensating South Yorkshire for the funding that they've taken away.
This money is used for the likes of building new infrastructure, for job creation schemes, all kinds of uses. The fact that there's less money in the pot, how significant is that for this part of Yorkshire?
Well, if we look at what's happened, in reality, the Highlands and Islands of Scotland, a region with the same level of growth as South Yorkshire, they've got 4 times more money than South Yorkshire's got. What does that mean? It means we won't be able to make the investments in our infrastructure, we won't be able to make the investments in our community schemes, in job training, in our young people's programmes that we should be able to do, and we desperately need. We are still an area which is lagging behind compared with other regions. There are still big problems in South Yorkshire, and European funding's always plugged that gap, and now we have to turn now to the government and ask them to fund it instead.
Just finally, is there any hope left? Was this case, this judgment in the Supreme Court, the end of the road?
Well, we've gone as far as we can legally. As we've said, on a legal technicality, the government's won this case. Now we're going to make our case for a fair system of funding. We want the government to come up with more funding for our areas to make sure we get the people back into work, we create the kind of infrastructure and attract the right kind of businesses in. Otherwise, we'll see the gap between South Yorkshire and the rest of the country widen even further.